Hello and welcome to Ask the Mayor. I am Mickey Thompson and thank you for joining us today. We have two very interesting guests that have joined us today. Al Outland with the Georgia Municipal Association and Bill Dunaway, the mayor in Marietta, are going to join us on the program. So please stay tuned. Well, welcome back to this program of Ask the Mayor. We have with us a very special guest today, Mayor Bill Dunaway, who is the mayor in Marietta, Georgia, and is also the vice chairman of the Metro Atlanta Mayors Association. And he was in town today for a meeting and so graciously agreed to come on and talk with us. Bill, thank you very much for being here today.
Glad to be here.
Yes, yes. Well, tell me a little bit, let's tell our audience a little bit about your city and some of the things that you're doing there.
Well, we're approximately 61,000. That's our nighttime population. Our daytime population is 119,000. So we have a lot of folks coming into Marietta every day, and that gives us one of our problems, traffic. And we are fortunate that we have our own independent school system, which is a real asset for Marietta. We are identified by our downtown Marietta Square, and just like Douglasville, our historic nature. Our big thing has been redevelopment. When I first took office 6 years ago, 65% of the citizens of Marietta lived in rental housing. Now, if that were all like Class A housing or post apartments or that kind of stuff, that would be fine, rental housing. We all lived in rental housing for a long time. I did, my wife did. But ours is a lot of housing left over from World War II, where we had the boom there, and it's dilapidated. We have a lot of absentee landlords, and we have a tremendous number of transients that live in Marietta. And if you don't live here long, if you don't live in a town long, you don't care about Marietta. You don't care about that town. So we've been operating on that. We've gotten rid of about, oh gosh, I didn't think I was going to have to think of this number. We've gotten rid of not quite 2,000 rental units in the past 6 years. And of course, no one got kicked out on the streets. Nobody did anything like that because we had such a high vacancy rate in our rental housing that, quite frankly, some of our rental landlords loved it, that we were getting rid of a lot of the competition.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're in a similar situation. Actually, the city of Douglasville, about 50% of our dwellings are some form of multifamily, duplex, quadruplex, apartment, or something like that. And it does have an impact on your tax base and some other things. So I'm interested. How did you accomplish what you're doing?
Well, some of those numbers I quoted came with the help of our Marietta Housing Authority. That they had a lot of public housing that, quite frankly, did not meet the standards and everything else. So they did get permission from HUD, and they did vacate those places and tear them down. Then one of those housing units the city bought from them, another one they did. But we established an organization called the Marietta Redevelopment Corporation. It's a public-private corporation. It is purely for redevelopment. The members are appointed by city council, and they do have city staff, but they're our redevelopment arm. We have taken advantage of TADs, tax allocation districts. Like I said, the Housing Authority has helped us out an awful lot. The school board has helped us out a lot. We formed a partnership with, we call it, it's Cobb Housing. It's a 501(c), which was in existence before we started on this effort, and their idea is to build affordable housing for sale, and we formed a partnership with them. And they are putting up about, doesn't sound like many, but they're putting up about 12 to 24 houses a year with our help. And we do use some CBDG money for this, and so that helps.
Well, Mayor, it certainly sounds like, and we know you're doing a wonderful job there because your city, Marietta, was just recognized for a tremendous award. Could you tell us about that award, what it was, how you received it, and what it means to your city?
You know, Mickey, I'm a little bit like you. Mayors sometimes get blamed for things we didn't do. We get an awful lot of credit for things we don't do. Most mayors, and I get to stand up and accept awards for things that I didn't do. But this was a big time award. We got it June a year ago. America's City Award. There are only 15 cities in the entire nation that got that award, and Marietta's the first one to get the award in Georgia in over 40 years. So we are very proud of that, but it is a competition thing, and we were in competition. We put in the application, and we got the award based on 3 factors. One was our school system. They had formed a new program called Marietta Reads, fighting illiteracy, not just at school children, but among parents, and also a lot of, we have an awful lot of English as second language. So we were trying to teach English or reading to them, what the city school system was. We initiated a wonderful new police program where we zoned the city and assigned a whole group of officers totally to this particular area, that particular area, and we called it the M-STAR program. And then our redevelopment is the other 3 factors. And we went out to Anaheim, we competed or gave presentations, and then we celebrated. And it is a well-recognized award. You know, it's one nice thing to get an award that makes you feel good. But we have used this award for marketing with a lot of developers because they do recognize the All-America City Award.
Well, Mayor, certainly I would like to congratulate you on that. I know that things like that don't automatically happen. There's a lot of hard work that you and a lot of other people did, and you're certainly should be proud of that. We're all proud of you. If we could just change gears a little bit, you know, there are some issues that are facing all of our cities next year, and I know you're very active in the Metro Atlanta Mayors Association and the Georgia Municipal Association, and there's one of those issues that are facing cities, and of course that is, how are we going to pay for the services that all of our citizens have become to expect? And obviously in Marietta, there are very high expectations. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about House Resolution 900, the taxing system that is probably going to be introduced in the next legislative session.
Well, I think it bothers every mayor, every school board, every commissioner, county commissioner, is that, quite frankly, I've always learned and understood and believed that government is best when it's kept closer to the citizen, and this would transfer all budgeting decisions to the state capitol, to the legislature. We would no longer, city council, your council, my council, would have to go down to the state capitol once a year and get your yearly allowance, stand in line for your yearly dole, and then you could start your budgeting process, but you could not control it. I also was told a long time ago when I asked my father for a raise in allowance, my father told me he who controls the purse strings controls you, and he made that abundantly clear. If the legislature is controlling our purse strings, they definitely control the city and or the county or the school board. And government is best left closer to the people. It's kind of hard to go down the state capitol and grab hold of 180 representatives and 50 some odd senators. It's very easy for citizens of Douglasville to grab hold of you, to grab hold of your council. It's very easy for the citizens of Marietta to grab hold of me. They do that quite frequently, every day. And if they don't like the way the city's being run, they get a hold of me or my council. And so this H.R. 900 that would literally control all purse strings down the state capitol is very scary, because I don't think we would end up with good government at all at the local level.
Well, Mayor, thank you very much for your work. I know you're going to be working during the next legislative session to represent those who live in Marietta and ensure that you're able to continue providing them the excellent service that you're doing now. Thank you for taking your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
To
Appreciate
come
it
in
very
and talk
much.
with me today.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back to today's program. We have with us a very special guest from the Georgia Municipal Association, Al Outland, who is the Director of Policy and Communications. Thank you very much for stopping by to talk with us today.
Thank you.
And I know you were in town today for the Metro Atlanta Mayors Association. You do a great job there. I thank you for your hard work there. GMA, for our audience, is an association that most of the cities throughout Georgia belong to. The city of Douglasville has been a member of GMA for an awful long time. They provide a tremendous service to all local governments throughout the state. And we appreciate you coming by to talk with us a little bit about GMA. And so I wonder if maybe you could just elaborate a little bit and tell us about your department as director of the department and some of the things that you do.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm very glad to be in Douglasville today. It's always enlightening for us, even as we represent cities every day, to be able to get out and see what communities are doing, because it's very difficult to sit up in the office,
Sure.
notwithstanding the various meetings that we have, and get a full appreciation for a community until you're in that community. And so that's always, as I say, one of the most rewarding things, from the mountains to the coast, to be able to go out and to see the amount of pride that communities have, and the selflessness that people have in their work every day at the local level, trying to build their communities. My area in GMA is policy and communications, and what that means essentially is that on the communications side, we try to take all that we do and wrap it up and present it in a way that is digestible. In today's environment, where there's an awful amount of competition for people's time, you have to be succinct, you have to be clear in your efforts to get a message across. And what we do is we look at everything that the association does, and we package that, whether it's on the web page, whether it's in video productions that we do for occasionally, whether it's in speech writing. The whole range of communications is put together by a team in my department. And so we are the brand maker, as it were, for GMA. We publish a newspaper 10 times a year. We have very strong relationships with the media as we attempt to get our story out about GMA, as well as the stories that emerge from our individual cities. We have a very strong online presence. We are increasingly looking toward electronic communications and communicating in different styles, because each of us accepts information and digests it in a different way, and we want to know the learning styles, as it were, of our city officials and the public, and we try to meet those particular needs. So that is the area of communications. On the policy side, we try to sit back for a moment and anticipate what some of the emerging trends are, where we ought to be, and then work very closely with our legislative staff in positioning GMA to articulate the issues that are important to the long-term viability of our cities. And so we work very closely with our legislative staff in putting together publications and other kinds of instruments to communicate to the public, to policymakers, those issues that are of importance to our cities.
Well, Al, 2008 is going to be a challenging year for cities throughout Georgia. Maybe you could possibly tell us a little bit about what GMA, and more particularly your department, is doing to facilitate cities in dealing with these issues that are going to be facing us next year.
Well, there are a number of issues that are facing us. There are some things that are unique to cities, but the really big issues are transportation, water policy, and taxation. Water, of course, is probably the most salient issue right now, just simply because we're all having to cut back on our usage of water, trying to meet the state goals, trying to deal with infrastructure needs that we have to make sure that the toilet flushes and the faucet runs. Those are kinds of things that we don't really pay a lot of attention to until something goes wrong. And I think the drought, of course, has elevated this in our conversation. But the real issue is being able to do it on a scale that allows our state to move forward. And cities occupy only about 6.5% of the land in Georgia, but we have about 40% of the population. So that concentration of population presents some unique challenges to us. And different cities do different things. What we've tried to do is to make sure that the operating environment, whether it's a small town, or whether it's a large city, or whether it's a city that's managing infrastructure and utilities, whatever the case may be, we focus on building quality of life and creating an environment that allows our city officials to deliver that quality of life.
Well, Al, I know the things that you're talking about, GMA has been doing for an awful long time, and they've been doing those things very well for an awful long time. This is an anniversary for GMA. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
That is true. My time flies. Back in 1933, a small group of cities met because there were some issues that they were faced in the General Assembly that are very similar to some issues that we are dealing with today. Namely, how do we pay for the things that our citizens want? What is going to be, the revenue stream that we have available to us? What kind of limitations we will have, and how much home rule that we will be able to retain. Home rule is a very important thing, not for the sake of simply controlling power, but rather to be able to be responsive to local citizens. And 75 years ago, we had a situation that is very similar to the debate that is emerging in the General Assembly right now. That is, what will be home rule authorities? What will be the revenue that is available to us to deliver what citizens want? And how do we keep government close to the people? And after all, that's what cities are about, government being closest to the people. We are celebrating this year 75 years since those cities came together to discuss those issues. Because in that very year in 1933, we created the Georgia Municipal Association. And over time, we have done a lot collectively to shape the landscape that the needs of our citizens are met through public policy at the local level.
Al, you mentioned something that I believe, and I know most of the citizens here in Douglasville believe, is very important, and that is the issue of home rule. I wonder if you could tell our audience a little bit about what home rule is and how it works.
Okay, basically, home rule in its ultimate sense is the authority of local government to make the decisions unfettered by a higher level of government, in this case the state. Since the state essentially creates our cities, there are authorities that are delegated to those cities. And from one state to the other, there may be a difference in terms of what that level of authority is. Sometimes you have to go back and get permissions to do certain things. Georgia is somewhere in the middle there in terms of the authorities that have been granted to cities to operate unfettered based on local policy that is guided by the needs and the input that we get from our citizens. In some states, you have a more tightly held situation where you virtually have to go to the legislature to get everything done that you want to do. And that's really part of the debate we're having right now on tax policy. It's about where are those decisions best made? And in a home rule environment, those decisions are best made at the local level relatively unfettered by control of state government.
Al, we thank you for all that you do for the city of Douglasville and cities throughout Georgia. You and your organization provide a benefit that city governments and the cities and the people who live in cities could not get anywhere else. Your organization for 75 years obviously has done a tremendous job, and our state has continued to grow tremendously during that time period. So we thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, thank you very much. And our job is made easy because of the great job that mayors and others like you across the state in giving of your time to build quality of life in our communities. And we wouldn't have a story to tell if it were not for the job that you're doing.
Well, thank you very much for taking your time to come to Douglasville today and to talk with us on today's Ask the Mayor program.
This is Bill Osborne, City Manager in Douglasville. I want to remind you that our City Council meets on the first and third Mondays in each month at 7:30 p.m. at City Hall. There's a legislative work session the preceding Thursday nights at 7:30 p.m. at City Hall. We welcome the public. There's always the opportunity for the public to speak during these meetings. But if you can't come to the meetings and you want to keep up with what's going on, catch us on City TV.
Well, thank you for joining us today on Ask the Mayor. We had two very important guests with us today, Al Outland with the Georgia Municipal Association and Mayor Donaway from Marietta. We certainly enjoyed having them interview and talk with us today, and thank you for joining us on this edition of Ask the Mayor.